Welcome to the MUFG Global Markets podcast with Ehsan Khoman, Head of Commodities, ESG and Emerging Markets Research EMEA. It's Friday, 4th October 2024, and in this week's podcast with Ehsan, we discuss key takeaways from New York Climate Week. The following podcast is intended for professional investors and eligible counterparties only, and not for retail clients. Any content should not be regarded as an offer to conduct investment business or an investment recommendation, but for information purposes only. Hi Ehsan, how are you today?
Hi, Naznina, very well. And yourself?
I'm doing good, thank you. So Ehsan, with New York Climate Week now wrapped up, can you offer our listeners the key takeaways?
Thanks, Naznina. So yes, Climate Week has now wrapped up with conversations happening across the city in New York, as well as in the UN General Assembly. The reality that we had all known for years, that is that the world is not doing enough to meet climate targets, really sunk into the ethos of these international conversations at Climate Week, as well as in the UN. Indeed, in recent years, sustainability has increasingly had to cope with toughened market conditions, policy and geopolitics. And meanwhile, despite technological advancements, many clean energy options still remain quite costly to scale. And these factors are affecting how companies execute transition plans, requiring them to think more critically about their sustainability strategies. And that was reflected really much in this year's New York Climate Week, where participants were beyond emphasizing ambition and achievements to discussing what challenges we face to accelerate the energy transition and what innovative solutions we can embark on. Let me endeavor to break down the key messages, Naznina. The first, progress on operational voluntary carbon market still continues. At the UN Climate Conference back in 2021, that's COP26, several initiatives were launched to address the lack of credibility of international voluntary carbon markets. Though progress has been made, many key elements are still being discussed and were discussed at New York Climate Week. And ongoing topics of conversation include those around whether carbon credits can be included in corporate net zero and how to distinguish high integrity credits from speculative credits. Second, on artificial intelligence, that's AI, of course, the demand that's been rising from AI for energy in particular, which of course refers to the general electrification trend that includes far more than AI alone, was a real big theme throughout New York Climate Week. And big tech companies are responding by growing more active in clean power procurement. Microsoft's finalization, for instance, of an offtake agreement to recommission a unit from the 3 Mile nuclear plant probably is the highest profile example of this to date, and dovetailed with a broader push at Climate Week to continue building momentum for baseload nuclear power. Now, while the jury is still out on potential efficiency gains from AI computing, as well as other energy-saving breakthroughs enabled by the technology, the likelihood of rising global power demand is now the consensus among most market observers. Third was the emphasis on the private sector. Commonalities in the messages at New York Climate Week centered on private sector and how sovereign strategies are not sufficient to avoid the worst effects of climate change. And citizens are demanding rapid action without increasing cost for the taxpayer. And an attractive option is to turn to the private sector, of course, as the solution maker and funding source. Now, for private sector players interested in partnering with governments, there remains an ample amount of opportunities. Governments will continue to increase their use of concessional finance and other initiatives to engage companies. And a notable development at Climate Week was the reform agenda presented by the Global Climate Fund Executive Director in her ongoing efforts to change the fund's unpredictable lending practices.
So the next stop is COP29 in Azerbaijan. Are there any insights that can be built on from New York Climate Week ahead of this all-important conference?
So, Naznina, the next major destination for international sustainability discussions, as you alluded to, is COP29 in Azerbaijan. Now, the topics at Climate Week will embed themselves in the prime negotiating priorities, such as climate finance, markets, especially Article 6 rules, and preparations for increased ambition at COP30 in Brazil in 2025. Now, the general consensus is pointing for now that a ramp up of finance fund flows at COP29 is not expected, and it will continue to be a point of contention. Here we see the focus will be on a new collective quantified goal on climate finance. That's the NCQG, which is due for completion at the conference itself. Furthermore, the global stocktake, that's the GST of COP28, set up a dialogue on implementing the GST outcomes. And so COP29 will be a key role in terms of meaningful dialogue around that piece. And finally, the various issues which surround Article 6 are in a state of flux, neither agreed nor disagreed. But we are hopeful of some meaningful progress here in terms of the event itself at COP29. But all in, there's Nina, a lot of themes in what will be a busy quarter ahead for the sustainability calendar, and we remain optimistic that authentic progress towards a just transition can be achieved.
Thank you for your insights, Ehsan. Speak to you again next time.
Thanks, Naznina. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to this MUFG Global Markets podcast. Rate, review, and subscribe, and contact your MUFG sales rep for more information. Come back next week for more insights from the Global Markets Research Team.